I built all the 4 golden weapons and the Garmadon costume, so it's time to finally make the highly requested mega weapon. I got started by finding a good picture of the weapon online and drawing the outline of it in Blender. From there I continued to model all the small details of the weapon until I got it as close as possible to the TV show. This was one of the trickiest things I have ever 3D modeled, with all the weird curves and shapes. But after a few weeks it was finally done and I could cut the model into parts to fit my 3D printer. So it's time to finally print this thing. If you want to print your own mega weapon, you can get the 3D model on my ArtStation page, linked up in the corner. It really helps support the channel and all the cool projects I'm working on. After a whole week, a few printer issues and some failed prints, all the parts were finally done. Most of the parts were able to print without much support material, but the bigger parts had quite a bit of support that I needed to remove before sanding all the parts. I started with the parts for the staff by sanding all the surfaces and getting into all the small spaces to really get it as smooth as possible. Before I sanded the rest of the weapon, I decided to glue together the staff into one piece, so I can sand away the glue before putting on filler. To help line up all the parts, I had cut down popsicle sticks that I placed in between the parts before using super glue and some hot glue to connect the parts. When I had glued together the staff, I got a broomstick I had laying around and cut it to length so that it would fit inside the staff and give the mega weapon some much needed support, because I think this thing will get quite heavy. And now it's time to spend another whole week to sand every little detail on the rest of the parts. I sanded every little corner of all the parts with multiple strengths of sanding paper and tried to get rid of as much print lines as possible. Some of the details were really hard to get to, so I decided that I could test my new spray filler a little later to try and smooth out the surfaces. A little later,
Lloyd?
one of the parts also didn't come out that great from the printer because of some printer issues, so it was really weak and could easily break. Therefore I decided to put on a bunch of filler on the whole surface to make sure it was strong enough before I sanded it. Once I had sanded all the parts, I got some popsicle sticks that I cut to length and glued together into plugs that will help hold together and line up the parts when I glue them all together. With a bunch of super glue, I firstly glued together the parts 2 and 2. And then I used some more plugs and glue to put those parts together. I glued together the parts for the staff and the parts for the top into 2 separate pieces, just like I did with the side of Quakes, so that it would be easier to sand and work with before it's time to paint everything. And with the parts glued together, it's time for some spray filler. Spraying them with a lot of filler will hopefully make sure I get a really smooth surface for the gold paint later. And now I will just have to wait a day before sanding everything again.
A few moments later.
After it had dried, I was planning on sanding it just a bit before painting, but the surface was still quite rough in a few places, so I decided to put on another layer of my other filler before sanding it. Once I had put filler in all the small corners of the weapon, it was time to sand it one last time. And soon I will have the power of the mega weapon! It was a bit tricky to get into all the small spots and sand everything with this big of a model, but I was able to make the surface quite smooth despite the weird shape. The staff was pretty easy to sand though. It just took a while to sand every little part of the staff. But now it's finally time to glue the parts together. With the weapon fully sanded, I could put back in the support stick and glue together the parts with some super glue. And with that, it's finally time to put on some paint.
You're quite right, it is.
First I got some primer and sprayed the whole weapon before bringing out the gold spray. Just as I have done on all the golden weapons, I sprayed a really thick layer of gold to get a super deep and shiny look. Once I had gotten paint in every little corner of the weapon and painted both sides, I just have to wait a few more days for it to dry.
A few days later.
And with that, the mega weapon is finally done. So I think it's time for a cool montage, as always.
Now to destroy the ninja once and for all. I wish to rip open Ninjago.
That was super cool. I'm extremely happy with the result. After months of 3D modeling and building the weapon, it was awesome to put on the Garmadon costume and hold the mega weapon in real life. And now, you might wonder what I'm planning on building next.
I wish to rip open Ninjago. You do want to turn all of Ninjago into your image. We will rule this world. I'm free.
That's right, I'm making all of that real. A golden ninja suit, elemental, jade and technoblade, and of course an overlord costume. So be sure to subscribe because you really don't want to miss all of that. And if you haven't already, you should go watch the video where I build the Garmadon costume right here.